So how do you break through with weight loss and lose your first 20 pounds on a plant-based diet? In this short video, I'd like to share with you what I suppose is my plant-based trifecta, for want of a less cliche and cheesy way of putting it. Basically my three-pronged approach that all plant-based weight loss beginners must consider. Let's dive in. So for each of my three prongs here, each of these influential factors with weight loss, I'm going to preface them by talking about what lots of plant-based dieters are doing wrong. So the first one, quite predictably, is very nutrition-centered. So many vegans and plant-based dieters think that just eating plants is going to cut it. I cannot tell you how many Instagram DMs I get every single day along the lines of, Rye, I've gone plant-based, I'm eating whole foods plant-based, but the weight's not budging, what's going on? I understand the sentiment there, because lots of people do just lose weight adding more plant foods into their diet. But my initial response is, okay, which plants are you actually eating then and how much? Because whilst that definition plant-based, or even more specifically whole foods plant-based, it's a pretty niche definition. Like, I've got a rough idea of what you mean. I can guess from experience what you mean. But I do think lots of people need more of a system that takes into account which plant foods are the most effective for weight loss, rather than just sort of generally eating lots of plants. I think that's a bit of a vague approach. And so this is exactly why I have my Slim and Sustain clients, my coaching program clients, follow the plant foods periodization method, which is basically a system and a structure that actually is very selective about which plant foods are included because of their effectiveness for weight loss. And as the program goes on, it includes more of these and less of those that aren't. So yeah, it's a whole foods plant-based program, but even under the whole foods plant-based umbrella, there are still some foods that, objectively speaking, much better, significantly better than others in terms of weight loss. And this is what the periodization method does. It introduces more of those as you go progressively. So that's what you need. You need some kind of system, regardless of whether you're a client of mine or not, you need some kind of system that is a lot more selective about which plant foods you're eating, because not all of them are the same. And it's important to mention that. Not all plant foods, as the cliche goes, are created equal. So you need to be a lot more fussy, is the bottom line. You need to be a lot more selective about which plants you're eating. My advice, jump on Google right now, here's the actionable step, and just type in plant-based calorie chart or plant-based calorie density pyramid. And this, for lots of you, not all of you, some of you are well versed on this already, but for lots of you, that's going to be really illuminating. There's a lot of you right now who do not actually twig, and this is nothing against you, you do not actually twig how differently some of the plant foods, whether it's nuts, seeds, whether it's the whole grain category, whether it's different types of whole grains, whether it's fruits and veggies or different types of fruits and veggies, the difference between dates and peaches, for example. Some of you don't realize how much those things differ in terms of calories, number one, fat content, fiber. You need to be a lot more picky if you're not losing weight right now and really looking to break through, I would suggest. Number two, so this is a massive mistake as well. We're onto the exercise stuff here. Lots of vegans and plant-based dieters don't do any exercise because they've been told by vegan influencers, or maybe they're perceived, because it's not always an instruction, but maybe they're picked up on this idea that diet is enough. Or, on the flip side of things, you've got a lot of people that rely way too much, and I don't think there's many plant-based dieters and vegans that do this, way too much on like really intensive HIIT workouts, high-intensity interval training and whatnot, and they only end up sort of crashing and burning with those sorts of workouts. They're not massively sustainable for most people unless you are super fit already. But certainly for beginners, as it pertains to losing your first 20 pounds, those seem to be the two camps. The people that aren't doing enough exercise and the people that are probably doing too much, or at least too much in terms of the intensity, not necessarily the frequency. So there is definitely a middle ground. I know it's super cliche, but there is definitely a middle ground to find on this, and this is why I love steady state training, and this is why, again, all of my Slim and Sustain clients, they get a steady state training program which is built around low to medium intensity exercises. Why? Because yeah, for the last 10 pounds maybe you need more intensity, but certainly for beginners just breaking through with weight loss, like you watching this video right now, these are things that are manageable. There's a low risk of injury, there's minimal barriers to getting started with them, and they're a whole lot better, of course, than doing nothing at all. So I think they're the perfect segue. So what do I mean by steady state training? I do mean things like walking, and yoga. I do mean things like Zumba. I do mean things like trampolining. I do mean things like running, but light running. I do mean jumping in the pool and doing a couple of lengths, maybe more than a couple of lengths here and there. Cycling at a moderate intensity. Nothing too wild, not any of these HIIT workouts. You can do these things once in a while if you want to. A bit of lightweight training, okay? Steady state training is essentially beautiful because it has minimal barriers to entry, if that makes sense. Ideal for beginners. And that's why it's the second core component of my Slim and Sustain program. So my encouragement to you right now, if you're a vegan or plant-based dieter doing no exercise because you've been led to believe, or you've read into things, because it's not always the influencer's fault or the medical doctor's fault. Sometimes people just, it's their perception that they don't need to do that much exercise because the nutrition is so important. In no other, dietary camp, like keto dieters, plant-based dieters, keto dieters, paleo dieters and whatnot, in none of those other sort of nutrition camps, if you will, because it does seem to be quite tribal with this stuff nowadays, do people undervalue exercise like vegans and plant-based dieters do. I think lots of vegans and plant-based dieters are right in their belief that nutrition is what matters most of all. That's my belief, absolutely, so not to contradict that. But lots of vegans and plant-based dieters also undervalue exercise. So do some, if you're not already, and start with the steady state stuff rather than setting the bar really high with lots of these extreme workouts. Question is, what can you actually adhere to? Sit down now and write out an exercise program for the next 7 days. But make sure it's realistic. You want it to be a little bit challenging. I don't want it to be a total cop-out with just a little bit of walking, if that's what you already do. Push yourself, but think about what you can actually adhere to over long term here. You don't need to be that fussy, like you do with the nutrition, for instance, but you don't need to be that fussy with the workouts when you're just getting started. At the more advanced stages of weight loss, that's when you do need to push it. But certainly for a beginner, just get going with some of these low to medium intensity exercise. That's my suggestion. And finally, number 3 here, folks, you probably guessed it, this is mindset related, but the big mistake that lots of vegans and plant-based dieters make on this is that they think very surface level. And by the way, this goes across the board, so on this one, it's not just vegans and plant-based dieters, but weight loss hopefuls in general seem to think on a surface level. They seem to think, okay, it's about the tactics, it's about the nutrition protocols, it's about the exercise plan, and I agree with that. But that's all that many weight loss hopefuls worry about. And it's not the full picture, it's not the full story. And that's exactly why the final pillar of my coaching program is the mental and emotional rewiring stuff, as many of you know. It's so key. These two factors, nutrition and exercise, of course, they're undoubtedly important. But in my experience, after helping hundreds of people in my coaching program get slim, and then thousands more online get slim, you absolutely, for lasting change, you have to go deeper. You have to go deeper. And hence all this mental and emotional rewiring stuff I'm always harping on about, of course. And that's why, with the help of various assignments and worksheets and lectures and coaching calls, this is why I get my Slim and Sustain clients to dive very deep into their psyche, very deep into their mental and emotional vulnerabilities or blind spots, and face those barriers, to health and weight mastery. The bottom line is, no matter how good your nutrition plan is on paper, how good your protocols for exercise are that you're following, your exercise regimen, you're not going to stick with it long if your mind isn't right. And that's it. That really is what it comes down to. Your level of consistency is going to be influenced, is going to be negatively affected if your mindset isn't right. Okay, your ability to keep away the cravings, or at least when you do have the cravings, resist the cravings. It's not going to be as strong. You're not going to be as resistant to peer pressure, the external voices, the self-sabotage, although self-sabotage is very subconscious, but the limiting beliefs at least, the obvious ones anyway. It's going to be very hard to resist those things if the mind isn't right. So yeah, you can have a good nutrition plan on paper. Yeah, you can have the exercise program down, and you're going to do better than someone that doesn't have a good plan for those things. That should go without saying. But to really break through and lose that 20 pounds and then go on and have success, not just a little shred down for the summer here and then you have rebound and gain it all back like so many people do, but for real meaningful change, you need to think about the mindset aspect to this stuff too. So again, I know this is a very conceptual conversation and I'm largely talking about my program and my clients, but that's just to illustrate how much I rate these things, and I do practice these things in what I do every single day as a weight loss coach, and myself as well, of course, because the journey's never done. It's never done. There's always work to do. But I've totally lost my train of thought, folks, but this is very conceptual. But in terms of actionable advice, sit down, take a couple of minutes now, turn off the phones, turn off the screens, sit down and try and start writing out all of the things that are holding you back from a mindset perspective. Is it perhaps other people and their negative voices getting in your head? Is it comparison making? Is it maybe a really bad relationship with the scales where sometimes you step on the scale and you really overreact and it looks like it's bad and the scale's gone up and then you go and have chocolate cake anyway? Do you think that's an appropriate answer? Even if the scale is right, which often it's not, but even if the scale is indicative of your progress and it is right on that particular reading, do you think going and having some vegan Ben & Jerry's ice cream is really the best answer to that? Of course not. So maybe take 5 minutes here, quiet, peace out, in a bit of a dark room, and just sit. That's maybe too excessive, but you get what I mean here. You need it to be calm and still, and sit down and write out on a piece of paper all the things that are holding your mindset back from weight loss success. I think that's a good actionable step to take. Again, you then have to go and do something about it, but I think that's the first place to start. So that's my 3-pronged approach, folks, and this is why the 3 pillars of my coaching program follow up with these things. So you need to be, number 1, very selective and fussy, just as a reminder about which plant food you're eating, rather than just thinking, I'm going to eat plants, just eat plants, add more plants into your diet. It's like, okay, what plants? How does that feature in your meals? How are your meals then made up? Maybe in time start thinking about things like macronutrient ratios. Again, I don't want to make it too confusing. You're a beginner, so you don't need to go that in depth. But looking at things like a calorie density chart, for example, as I told you to, as I suggested, that can be really, really helpful. 2, don't do zero exercise and don't go crazy with really, really intense exercise. As a beginner, as somebody just breaking through, both of those things are a mistake. There is a middle ground. Lots of low to medium intensity exercise. When I say lots, you don't need to do crazy amounts, but definitely consistently, a couple of sessions over the course of a week to get you started. Very, very wise indeed. And third, of course, think about mindset. Thinking about your mental and emotional barriers to weight loss, that's going to be huge. And that's why, again, those 3 things are the 3 cornerstones of my coaching program. I really am practicing what I preach here, to say the least. So, if any of you are looking to get serious here and have some extreme accountability and you would like some more help with weight loss, you can apply to learn more, register your interest for the Vegan Slim and Sustain coaching program to work one-on-one with me down below. I'll put the link there, fill out the application, and I'll chat to you about it very soon. And we'll figure out together if you're a good fit for that program, and I'll give you all the information for it there. Aside from that, thank you very much for your time today, folks. Hope you got some actionable tips from this. See you soon.